Hey guys, welcome back. I am Scott with Prepper Talk Radio, and I've got Marcello here. And the surprising thing about Marcello is I've known him almost 20 years.
We go way back.
Maybe even longer. It would have been, about 2000 that we met.
It was, right around then.
Living in our college days.
You're right.
Now we're dads. We're old guys. Not that old.
Yeah.
Marcello looks a lot younger than I do, but Marcello's always looked way better than I have. So,
That's
ladies, feast your eyes. He's married, sorry. But he's here with a Food Storage Depot. And how long have you had Food Storage Depot?
So Food Storage Depot started up in 2008.
Okay.
And so we used to be number 3 on the internet. Now we're about number 4 to 6, which isn't bad either. But our clients include Navy SEALs, FEMA, Apple Computers Worldwide, just a bunch of them. And Food Storage Depot is one of my companies. I also own Purify Emergency Water, which is the longest lasting emergency water in the world. 7 Prep Steps, which is the most comprehensive, streamlined emergency prep training in the world. And then I own a food brand called Ready Harvest, and so just a bunch of different things.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't know you owned Ready Harvest too. Okay, so learning something new. I haven't talked to you in a little while, so
It's been a while.
Yeah. But you're here at the Be Prepared Expo. What can people expect to see with what you've got here today?
So we brought a little sampling of our foods and our different products. We show people a little bit of education. In fact, the people that work with me, my team, are just amazing. They've been doing preparedness for the last couple decades, and on top of that, I've been able to train them. So in my experience over a decade, I've probably made over maybe $200,000-$300,000 in mistakes to learn what I've learned. And most people don't do that. So when I speak at conferences like this conference right here, it's kind of fun because Utah is the center of preparedness for the world, right? And so you'll have people in the front row and then the last row and the back row, and they're like this. Go ahead, try to teach me something new, right?
Right.
But they're not manufacturers. They haven't made hundreds of thousands of dollars in mistakes. They believe what everybody's taught them on YouTube and on Facebook. And the funny thing is, a lot of times it's wrong. And they don't know that because they don't do the food. They don't make the food. They haven't had to throw away a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And so when people walk into our store, which is the largest emergency prep store in Utah, okay, and when they work with my team, what they find out is that they get really educated. So when these people, and I'm speaking, they'll come up to me afterwards and they'll go, wow, I learned more in 60 minutes than doing this for 20, 30 years, right? And that's the type of stuff that we teach. So that kind of what stands us apart is we just don't sell stuff, we teach principles. Simple things like beans, for example.
Right.
People are always storing up beans, right? But they don't understand 2 big things. First of all, in the United States, nobody knows how to cook beans. I mean, when's the last time you pressure cooked beans, right?
I've never pressure cooked beans.
Yeah.
I've always water bathed them first.
Okay.
Rinse them, water bath them, and then slow cooked them in a crock pot,
which is amazing,
which
right?
is great, but pressure cooking is better.
Yeah, and the thing about it is in emergency situations, people don't understand that, first of all, they don't know how to make them like you do, right? You know how to make them.
Well, that's because I've got cousins that they lived in parts of the world where beans are
where they're normal.
Daily normal thing. And they're like, oh yeah, you're cooking them wrong. So I used to throw them in a pot and try to cook them.
Yeah.
And they never turned out quite right.
No, not at all. And what's interesting is if you don't rotate those beans every year, but you stick them in a can like people do, and you open them up 10, 15, 20, 25 years later thinking you're going to eat those beans harden over time. And then when they harden over time, you soak them overnight. You're thinking that's good enough, right? You throw them in a pressure cooker, not just a regular slow cooker or anything like that, and they're still hard. And then you wasted all your fuel that you should be using to heat your home or cook something else or whatever else. But people understand the best way to do it is pre-cooked beans. If you got pre-cooked beans, you literally can throw them in your mouth and crunch on them like hard candy, right?
Yeah.
Not even hard candy, just a nice candy, right?
Okay.
And or put them in cold water for maybe 2 hours and they're completely soft. Or you put them in hot water for 10 to 15 minutes and they are done with that gravy that the beans create, right? It has all that in 10 to 15 minutes. And that's just one example of about 100 different mistakes that people are making that they just don't know what they don't know, right?
That's an interesting point. I hadn't thought of that. We have lots of freeze-dried beans as well.
Freeze-dried beans are great.
But we've got a lot of hard-packed beans that are just dry.
Yeah.
But those you have to water bath them for a while. Like
Yeah, and you have to
it takes
rotate
a long
them.
time.
You have to rotate them, or else they get too hard over time.
That's interesting.
And people don't know that because they
I
haven't
better
been
check my
around
old
now.
beans, guys.
Exactly, check your beans.
Check your old beans. If you've got beans that are older than a year, 2 years.
Yeah, a year,
you're
2
gonna
years
have
still
some-
fine.
You're gonna have some problems once they hit that 5, 10 year. When
Yeah.
they're a teenager, they're gonna be worse than your teenager.
Exactly. When they're a teenager, it's harder
They're
than
too hard.
harder than a teenager, right? That's a good one.
That's awesome. You
I got to
can use
use that
that.
one sometime.
You can use it.
That's awesome. No, but if you know how to do food right, you don't have to get to a preparedness situation where you need to be able to sustain a life. And then finding out that you can't use your food, or you had a pre-cooked, or not even a pre-cooked meal, a pre-mixed meal that off-tasted within about 7 to 10 years. And you go to eat it, and it uses the words up to 25-year shelf life, just to find out that up to is how they get out of the FDA, you know. But you need to know what works and what doesn't work, so you're not surprised. Because the worst time to find out is when you really need it, and when a kid needs it. One of my teammates almost died in China from starvation.
Really?
And you got to hear her story sometime. But she almost died of starvation in China with food all around her.
We need to get her on the podcast.
It's amazing. But the interesting thing is people don't understand if they're not used to their food, if they haven't, they buy their buckets of pre-made meals. I challenge y'all, if you have anything like that, try to live off of it for 1 week.
Even a weekend.
Even a weekend.
Here's the thing.
Even a weekend.
Most people, if it's not part of their daily consumption,
No.
You try it over the weekend, you're going to have one of two problems that are going to be semi-severe.
Yeah.
They're either going to have the runs,
Or
they're going to
blocked
get
up.
completely blocked up, which is probably 90% more likely to
Absolutely
happen.
blocked up.
And it's horrible. Like, you feel ill. Your energy's gone. Your pain level's super through the roof.
Oh yeah.
I've tried it, and I was like, that's when I really kind of scaled back and said, okay, only what we eat normally.
Oh,
we still
totally.
have some of the 25-year stuff.
Yeah.
But we try to rotate that so none of it lasts more than 5 years.
Yeah, the thing about it is a lot of the food out there that does say up to 25-year shelf life on the meals doesn't last that long. And again, there's a reason why it says up to, right?
Yeah.
But what's interesting is people make that their primary meal in emergencies. There's a reason why third world countries live off of beans and rice and quick oats and all these things that are base foods. I had a company trying to sell me, when we were on number 3 on the internet, we were getting a lot of traffic from all over the world, shipping to Asia, or to Europe, to Australia, to all these different places. And so what's interesting is I had companies calling me all the time, can we be on your site? Can we be on your site? I had one company, I won't say names, but I had one company claiming a 25-year shelf life, up to 25 years, and they were giving a month's worth of food for a pretty interesting price, right? And you got to remember, there's principles here. Emergency food is your most expensive food. It's been packaged for long term. And so when people just recently, over the last week actually, somebody had called me in and said, hey, I've got 4 years worth of food and I paid about $3,000 for it. And I was sitting there thinking, okay, how much do you pay?
How old is it?
It's not even that old. That's the interesting thing, is just barely. But the interesting thing is, I asked the simple question, how much do you spend on your family for food every month? $500, $1,000, whatever it is, I get $1,000. People saying 500 to 1,000 is normally the range. But say 500, let's keep it really simple.
Yeah.
$500 a month, okay? This is supposed to be the most expensive food. It'll become the cheapest over even a year from now. It'll be cheapest the way inflation's going. But 10, 20, 30 years from now, if you do the right food, that's going to be the cheapest food you've ever bought, right? But I'll ask them, okay, you spend $500. Now, this is packaged for long term. It should cost you more. So if you got 4 years worth of food, let's do the math here, okay? 6,000 times 4, right? Did you spend $24,000 on your food? And the answer was no, I spent $3,000. Then you need to question that food.
Well, obviously look at the calorie count.
Yeah.
Most of the people that I found in the food storage industry, they tell you, hey, okay, you buy all this food and it's everything you need for a year, but they're calculated on 780 calories a day per person.
Oh, it's sickening.
Per person, or they'll hit you on servings. It's the right number of servings. But a serving size is like 180 calories or 150 calories, right? So that's why I created a food storage calculator.
Yeah.
And on my calculator, it's free on the website, guys.
Yeah.
This is great because it focuses on your pantry foods, the stuff you're eating all the time.
Yep.
You look at it and you say, okay, my can of beans, it's 180 calories per serving, 3.5 servings per can.
Absolutely.
Right? And then that tells you kind of where you are, but then it goes a step further and says, okay, how many calories a day do you really need?
Yeah.
And then based on that, it tells you how long your food's going to last.
Absolutely.
Right? But it's the food you're rotating, right? And you've experienced this with you're shipping food all over the world. You
Yep.
know how much people actually eat.
Yep.
Like, what's a real daily calorie need?
So a daily calorie, and I'm going to make it very, very simple, okay? If you go online and go and put in RMR calculator, resting metabolic rate calculator, what it does is it takes your age, it takes your weight, it takes your height, and it ends up calculating how many calories you spend if you laid down and did nothing all day. If you just rested all day, how many calories are you burning? Okay. Now I'm a little chunky, but not super chunky, right? I'm 5'8". You know, what would you imagine? People would say, "Oh, you're about 1,200 calories." No, my resting metabolic rate is about 1,800 calories per day.
Yeah.
That's if I did nothing, not even in a stressful situation. Now, I had one of those companies call me back in the day, right? And then I definitely said no, you know. And this is what motivated me to put together the 7 Prep Step course, right?
There you go.
Because they were selling a month's worth of food, and when I calculated, it was, I can't remember, it was like 560 or 650 calories per day. And I said, you know, nobody can live off that, right?
So, you know how many calories a day they provided the people in Auschwitz? 780 calories a day.
They got more calories than that company was offering.
And that's, so it's interesting,
Oh
is
my
like
goodness.
one of the largest food storage, companies is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Absolutely.
And that's where a lot of the food storage companies we have now have kind of come from. Like, their food storage calculator was the beginning.
Yep.
And that's 1,000 calories.
Oh yeah.
It's just over Auschwitz.
Yeah.
So, on my calorie counter starts with kids in mind. Kids up to 10 years old, 1,800 calories minimum a day.
Yep.
Like, and you need more if you're now the fuel source. You got to find all the fuel. You got to refine all your water and all
stress,
prepping all your food longer. The stress, like, there's so many more factors. Like, I'm 300 pounds. I need almost 4,000 calories a day to maintain this body of a god of Buddha, right? Like, I need a lot of calories to maintain this. That's if I'm working. If I'm not working, my sedentary is like 2,900 calories.
Yeah.
Like, that's just laying here. And that's me wasting away slowly, really slowly. But yeah, people don't think about how many calories do I really need.
Absolutely.
They've never, so RMR
calculator.
Guys,
you can find a ton of them online and just go ahead and do it. But it's true, in fact, the funny thing is, with that company, I ended up telling them, look, you can't live off of 600, 560, 650 calories. Can't remember how much it was. You can't live off of that. And they said, well, if you want, you can just double or quadruple or, just 5 times it, and you'll be able to get the calories you need. And I go, but first of all, it won't last a month. Second of all, if I do that, now I'm up to 7,000, 8,000 milligrams of salt per day, talking about blocking bowels, talking about hypertension, talking about killing people over 60 years old, okay? It's like you either, it's pick your poison. Which one do you want? Do you want to die of lack of calories or too much sodium, right?
Wow.
And so it's just dumb mistakes people are making all day long. People sell themselves for money. And if you find the principles or understand the principles of food, water, everything else, I mean, food and water are the most important because everything else you can figure out during an emergency, sanitation, lighting, heating, all this stuff you can figure out during an emergency. But if you don't have the right food and water, you're dead. You're not getting it from Costco. Now, those things are also important. You need to meet your other needs, right? Because if you get too cold, you're going to die, right? Or too hot or whatever else. But food and water, man, don't take chances. 1 is none, 2 is 1, 3 is 2, right?
That's really interesting. Because my background in preparedness is more the wilderness survival side where it started, right? And so the emergency rule of 3 is the most important foundation for me. And some of you might agree or disagree with this. That's fine. You do you. I'll do me. My number 1 most important thing is shelter and first aid.
Yeah.
Because those are the experiences that I've had and I've dealt with the most.
From wilderness survival.
From wilderness survival.
Exactly.
But I've also always had 2 to 3 days of food on me in wilderness survival scenarios.
Yep.
I packed that in. So it's kind of the foundation.
Absolutely.
But then you prioritize based on what's coming. And if you're in a stressful situation, you're in a disaster, the last thing you want to try to figure out is how am I going to get more water and more food.
And the thing about it is a lot of people, if you're going to do the little timeline of preparedness, most people are too lazy, and I'm not saying this in a mean way, it's just true. Me included. People get lazy. They try to cut out stress, right? They're not going to take the time to become a pro like you are at wilderness survival, which I've done wilderness survival, but man, I wish I knew what you knew.
Oh, and I don't know, like Tyler was just sitting over there. I know nothing now. Like my wilderness survival skills are almost, I'd say 60% of where they used to be.
Yeah.
But I could still survive.
Absolutely.
And it's number 1, it's the things you know.
Yeah.
The things they're out of practice.
Totally.
Right? I'm out of practice on those things. But like my food storage and my water storage, guess who's been using my food storage and water storage the last 4 years to get by?
Yep.
This guy.
Exactly.
Like my family. Like your food storage should be something that you're restocking, but also something that you're using consistently. We're not restocking it as fast as we used to.
Yeah.
But we have a 4 to 5 year supply of food at any given time.
Which is smart. I got a 7-year supply. People think that's overkill, but I believe in Joseph of Egypt.
Right?
I think good principle, but also, you know something? I used to be director of entrepreneur development for the state of Utah. Okay, if I'm going to put money into something right now, I don't trust the stock market. Yeah, I mean, silver and all that stuff's great for hedging inflation, right? But talking about investment, if you get a good 30-year shelf life food that actually really does last 30 years, I'll tell you, in about 2-3 years, that food's already doubled in price. My food storage is worth so much right now.
Yeah.
You
Tens
know?
and 20s and 30s and thousands of dollars of appreciation in the last few months.
Oh yeah, it's
Like,
just amazing.
That's why I love the story of Joseph. They actually, I think it was in 1999, I heard of this, there was an article that came out that they just found some more wheat stores. You remember that?
From Egypt.
And I think there was another one recently too that they said they found even more wheat.
Yep.
And guess what? It germinated. They tested it and it worked. Guys, wheat stores indefinitely if it's in the right conditions.
If it's the right conditions. Yeah,
And
you and I talked about
you
wheat
just had a
earlier.
neat experience with that today.
Yeah, I was at the agriculture Department of Agriculture, and we were actually testing three wheats that I got from farmers that were claiming a bunch of stuff. And man, I learned a ton. You know, it's just amazing watching all the equipment, watching the trucks come in, them testing it, testing the protein, testing the moisture account, and a thing you and I talked about, which is the falling level, which nobody talks about. You know,
No idea, guys.
Yeah, and you're talking about if you're going to get long-term wheat stored up, people are storing junk out there, and nobody even knows it. You know, if you don't know the science, you don't understand what you're storing. You're storing up junk. Most of the people out there, I'll tell you, when I speak at all these different places, it's just amazing how many people think they're prepared and they're not.
Yeah. And it's a lot worse than you realize.
Oh, absolutely.
I had no idea. Like when we reconnected a few years back, you were doing your seven prep steps.
Yeah.
And I had no idea that you were Food Storage Depot.
You
We
did?
never talked about that.
Oh, really? I didn't
know.
you.
I didn't know he was Food Storage Depot until about 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Oh, you're kidding.
I was just like 7 prep steps. I'm like, all right, but like I knew you're always into preparedness.
Yeah.
You know, when you're into prep, like others that like you're like, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's the things you talk about, the things you prioritize.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's like there's so many people now that are like, you guys are running on the stores.
Yeah.
It's preppers. You guys are running on the stores, and we run out of food. And I'm like, no, we're not. We've got 7 years, or 5 years, or 4 years, or a year, or 9 months. Like, the simple start is expand your pantry. Those are the things you eat on.
You can do that from the local supermarket. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be. I mean, you can have 6 to 12 months worth of that stuff.
Easy.
Easily.
And then you start adding other things, but then make sure everything you add is something that's part of your diet.
Yeah.
Your daily diet. If not daily, weekly.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're storing junk.
Yep.
You know, and then count the calories, double check the servings. When you got into this, like, obviously the food issue was the most important issue for you. Making sure people are getting the right food.
Food and water. Yep.
Food and water. Solving that problem first.
Yeah.
How is it any different today helping people? You think people are better prepared, worse prepared?
Oh, I think people are believing all that they see on YouTube and Facebook and all the ads out there. You got to remember, if there's a ton of ads out there for food and water companies, food especially, if there's a ton of ads for a food company out there, you can almost 100% guarantee they have cheap products and huge margins, or else they wouldn't be able to advertise like that. And when they do that, they become the top talked about something because everybody talks about what they see. What I found about in my industry is that some of the best companies you've never heard of.
Yeah, that's true.
They are the best, but they don't have the budgets to advertise, or they don't have the margins to advertise because they have such a quality product that they can't outmarket everyone. Does that make sense? So I think a lot of people are totally unprepared because they're believing the marketing out there instead of questioning all the marketing.
Smart.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So if people want to find you, where do they go?
You can go to foodstoragedepot.com,
Okay.
7prepsteps.com, Purify Emergency Water, just a whole bunch of different things. But Food Storage Depot is a pretty good place to start. If you're in Utah, stop by our store. If you want to learn emergency preparedness, it took me over 3,000 hours to put that course together, and you understand how hard it
yeah.
is. I mean, you think you could put a course together in a few weeks, but when you take 10 years worth of knowledge, 15,000 hours worth of experience,
trial and error.
Yeah, and you try to put this into a course. It's really easy to put out a course this big. It's really hard to put out a course this big, but not lose this much information.
Yeah.
It's like that story of the famous writer who wrote his friend and said, "Hey, sorry for the long letter. If I had more time, it would have been shorter." That's the idea. Yeah, how do you make it so? Because it's a disservice when you put out a course this big, because no family will ever finish it.
Right.
Know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to make it streamlined so that they can get it done in 90 days. And that's what we've done.
Awesome.
And so anyways, yeah, you can go to any of those or just reach out to you. This guy, one of the pros right here. Just amazing.
That's very kind. Thank you. I wouldn't say I'm the pro. I'm the passionate guy that knows how to get people connected.
Yeah.
For those of you guys who've been following my history with this, I started PrepperCon because I fell upon a stat that it sickened me. Mm-hmm. And that was right before I went to a Comic-Con event, and I was helping a brother-in-law with the booth there, and I'm like, this is the most exciting event I've been to, but it was the most useless event because there was nothing helping anyone there. You weren't learning anything new that would help you. You weren't putting money towards a good cause. It was all entertainment, and I was like, prepping needs to be more exciting like this.
Absolutely.
So that more people would get aware and awake to it. And so I created PrepperCon with the very intent of educate and entertain at the same time.
And you have to do that.
So that people would get engaged, and it worked. I mean, we had over 12,000, or our first year was 10,500 people.
Oh, amazing.
In the event center, and it became the largest one in the nation.
Absolutely.
The next year we had just over 12,000. Third year was just over 13,800.
Yep.
And then I sold it, and I kept doing the podcast and radio show. But I kind of hid for a while. Like PrepperCon almost killed me.
Oh yeah.
But I'm grateful that I had that experience because I helped 36,000 people get better prepared than they were or they would have before.
Yep.
And a lot of the events I go to, they're really boring.
Yeah.
They need to be more fun and more engaging. And
you have to edutain. If you don't do that,
and YouTube, there's a lot of good content, but there's also a lot of bad content.
Yep.
And usually the channels with a ton of views are the bad content.
So some of the biggest names in preparedness teach some of the worst things that I've seen.
Yeah.
But they're not manufacturers,
Yeah. I've been guilty of saying the wrong things by myself. And so
that's
then I have to go and
part of our learning, right?
Do a retraction and say, hey guys, don't do what I said. Now do what this is.
Yeah.
And it's those experiences, those failures on my part where I've learned the hard lesson. Like, I've completely changed. Like, I hate 72-hour kits. Everyone loves 72-hour kits. For about 15 years, I've been doing 96-hour kits.
Yep.
And I never buy the store-bought ones. I always build them myself.
Yeah.
I'll have some ration bars.
Yeah.
Because it's quick calories when I need it.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I'd rather make my own thing.
Yeah.
Like, this year, my experiment in the next few months, I'm going to make my own pemmican.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. It'll last a long time.
Yeah.
But it's super calorie dense.
Absolutely.
And it's not going to plug you up.
Yep.
Right? Like the calorie bars. So learning those things, you don't know until you try it.
No, you don't.
Or unless you listen to someone who's tried and failed, and then you know, hey, don't do that.
Yeah.
So guys, he's tried and failed. Like, what you say, over $250,000 worth of tried and failed?
200,000 to 300,000, somewhere around there.
So guys, if you can get down here, but please go check out his website. The most important one, foodstoragedepot.com, and then 7prepsteps.
7prepsteps.com.
Yeah. Guys, hey, thank you.
And if there's any way, like, I have a personal mission. I was kind of in the background enjoying just not passive income stuff. And my wife, last year, she said we need to help more people because bad times are coming.
They are.
And I've been in this industry long enough to know that bad times are coming. And so we got back into the saddle. And I've been working a lot, and my goal is to somehow help 10,000 families or more this year, 2022, to get prepared. Not just to think about it, but to get prepared before the end of the year. Because again, I'd like to leave a little mark that's more important than money. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So if there's any way to do that, that would be awesome.
That's why we do Prepper Talk Radio. Like, we brought it back because there's a bigger need.
Yep.
We took a break, but we're back. So, guys, stick around, stay tuned. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe. We're going to have a ton more videos just like this. Great information. Hope you guys are having a wonderful day listening to all this, paying attention, and, becoming ready-minded.
Awesome. Thank you.